Archer. I also teach Voice of Democracy, a senior seminar on the elections. We've been teaching this class for 4 years now, and these are some of our students.
I'm Carly, and I'm a senior at Archer, and like Ms. Winkler said, I'm a student in the elections class.
I'm Audrey, I'm a senior in the elections class as well.
I'm Elizabeth English, and I'm head of school.
Alright, so we're going to start out by asking you why it is important for us to discuss the election at Archer.
I think all students in schools everywhere in the country should be discussing the election, because what happens in this election will impact your future. Whether we're talking about climate change or income equality or health care, all of the policies that are decided in this next administration will affect your lives. And not only that, we're talking about the selection of Supreme Court justices who will make critical decisions.
I was wondering how you'd suggest students and teachers talking about the local elections as well, and maybe ways to even incorporate it into the curriculum.
Especially because it just had such an impact on us at Archer with our city council fight and that sort of thing.
Correct.
We're talking about how that was so directly related to our lives at Archer specifically.
Yeah, that's a great point. Working here at Archer has been a real education for me when it comes to local politics, which I think most people don't pay attention to, and then you realize that really critical decisions are made about your local community on the community councils and through your council office. I mean, it took me a long time to understand that that's a real source of power, and it has an incredible impact on your day-to-day life. I think it's something we could do a better job at Archer, is helping students understand local politics and how easy it is to get involved. That was the surprising thing to me. The people who turn up at those community council meetings, they have a lot of influence, and there aren't that many of them who turn up. So if you do get involved on the local level, you have a real shot to have a voice, to have an impact, and to get your feet wet in politics.
So for students who do want to get involved on the local level, how would you suggest ways to do that?
I think, you can certainly participate by showing up at your local community council. There was a meeting last night at the Brentwood Community Council, and Archer always has a representative there. We pay very close attention to what's happening on the local community councils, because in some ways we're at their mercy. I would just encourage all students, when you go to college, join your local, the Republicans or the Democrats, join those groups and see what's happening, and you're going to get a first-hand lesson on how to participate in democracy. I think one of the exciting things about the election class at Archer is you're already getting that education. Like, how does democracy work? And you're finding that out right now in real time during the election.
And I think also what's interesting is we offer this class not only during presidential election years. So right now it's very easy for our class to sort of focus on what is mainstream and what is popular. But in the past we've focused on midterm elections, local elections, California initiatives. And we're going to continue to do so when we start looking at the propositions and looking at local Los Angeles elections.
How can we deliver unbiased information on the election?
Well, I think in part that's what the elections course is set up to do, which is to pay attention to the candidates' platforms, to actually read what their positions are, and also to look critically at what each candidate is saying. I mean, the amazing thing is when a candidate stands up and gives a speech, we have access to that film footage and to that transcript, and we have access to all of their policies, how they've changed over the years, and then we can, really examine them critically. And that is the key to looking in an unbiased way, is to look at the facts.
And I think all of our departments do a really nice job of teaching you credibility in sources, and really spend the time to investigate what makes the source reliable. I think you guys have been doing that since sixth grade. Yeah. So we continue to do that, and as you get older, it gets more sophisticated. But at this level, when we're talking about an election, we have to use those skills at every turn.
If we do nothing else at Archer, teaching you how to discern the credibility of a source it's probably the most important thing that you could leave here with, because we are saturated with information and anyone can write, post, publish, anything. And as we're seeing, we're kind of living in a fact-free universe right now, which it's unprecedented, really. I mean, I'm sure Ms. Pinkwater would agree, but the standard for what a public figure can say, the standard of accountability has changed. And so educating people to be critical and to examine sources in a very, very critical and discerning way is fundamental to democracy, really.
Regardless of politics, how would the first female president impact the Archer community?
Well, the empowerment of girls and women is in our mission, so I feel like this is a moment we've been waiting for a long time at Archer. I really believe that it's critical for girls to have powerful female role models. One of the things that Archer parent and founder of the Institute of Gender and Media, Gina Davis, says is, if you can see it, you can be it. And I think having a female president will be incredibly important for girls all over the country and indeed the world. That said, I'm also a little worried about it because, as we know with President Obama, it was incredible for us to have our first African American president, but he was also subjected to a lot of racism along the way. And I know that should we have our first female president, it will be a rough thing for girls and women to watch at times. And we know that at Archer, we understand gender bias and we recognize it when we see it. But that said, it's going to be an extraordinary moment for Archer.
Yeah, I remember last year in our AP US History class, we were just talking, we all kind of sat back and were like, wow, we have only had the right to vote for a little under 100 years.
Right.
Like, oh. And it's just, I think we're very lucky to be living in this time where, you know, it's almost unfathomable for me to think of women in that way. And
right.
I just feel lucky to not only just be in this time period, but also to have gone to a school like Archer that makes me think that anything's possible when we can be president. So
right.
regardless if she gets elected, I at least feel like I will leave this institution knowing that it's possible and that glass ceiling doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And I think also keep in mind, it's been less than 100 years since women have had the right to vote. Women vote more than men, statistically speaking. So women definitely are, a huge part of the voting population. There's not enough women running at every level, and I think that that's something to take with you when you go to college. Is, we have a lot of women voting, but they need to be able to vote for women also, and so we have to get more women involved in politics at an earlier stage, so that our Congress can represent 50% of the population as well.
It's interesting because when I was in high school, no one was having this conversation. Like, there was no consciousness about, well, what percentage of senators are women, and why have we had the vote for at that time less than 75 years, which is incredible. Like, right. My mother was born in this country at a time when women didn't, my mother didn't have the right to vote, which is just, as someone said it, unfathomable. So we're having this conversation, and people like Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and others are really making a concerted effort to cultivate female candidates. But my question to you is, as a young woman watching this election, would you ever run for office? Would you do it? Because it's not easy on the individual who puts herself out there.
In one of our classes last week, we talked about the qualities that we think make a good candidate and that sort of thing, or a good leader. I just did not picture myself. Like, I was not talking about myself. I felt very removed from that situation, but even just bringing that up, like, I could if I wanted to, and I feel like I would feel fulfilled in that sort of position, but I never really considered it because, I see Hillary Clinton be called shrill every day in the media, it seems, and so that sort of thing, although it's it takes so much courage to do that sort of thing, especially as a woman, regardless of whether or not you're going to run for the Republican seat or the Democrat seat. And so that's just, it's a wake-up call to realize that.
And I think seeing Hillary Clinton in the presidential race has been exciting for me to know that I have such a powerful and huge role model who has such courage, and she's just paving the way for future female politicians. It's an exciting moment.
In May of last year, Archer alum Sydney Stone wrote an article titled "Coming Out as Conservative," in which a lot of students actually expressed their fear of revealing minority views within the classroom. So our question to you is, how can we create an open, safe space for discussion where those with different opinions feel comfortable voicing their views at Archer?
It's a great question, and it's one that every school struggles with every single election season. Schools are value-laden places, and as an independent school, Archer is very clear about its values. We are an inclusive school. We believe in diversity. We believe in the value of plurality. We believe in feminism. So I think on the one hand, we have the luxury of being very clear about what our core values are. That said, one of the most important principles of American democracy is freedom of speech. And we have to be sure that we are creating, we are sustaining a community where everyone feels free to speak their minds. And everyone has a set of values which they are free to share. How do you share values and opinions in a way that is respectful, that is substantiated, that is reasoned? Really, it's up to your generation, and it's up to us as your teachers to teach you how to have a reasonable conversation with someone who has differing views. It's what our country is founded on. And without freedom of speech, without conservative views in the midst, we're just talking to ourselves, or vice versa. If it's a predominantly conservative community and there's an absence of liberal views, it's artificial. I mean, this is a very pluralistic country, and even though we reside, on the West Coast, there's a whole middle of the country that may see and experience life in a very different way, and I worry about the absence of that perspective and that voice. So I think it is up to our teachers to create spaces for reasonable discourse that include all opinions, and I have total confidence in our teachers to be able to do that. And to model it, because it's not being modeled for all of you in popular culture.
I'd like to ask further about the administration's role and the faculty's role in helping students shape their own political views.
I don't think it's our job to help you to help shape your political views. I think it's our job to teach you, as Ms. Pinkwater was saying, to think critically, to scrutinize sources of information, to understand the difference to understand what rhetoric is. I mean, rhetoric is designed to persuade, and you need to be able to recognize that. What is it that this person wants me to think or wants me to do, and how do I identify that? I would say it's not our job to help you shape your political views. It's our job to help you learn how to think critically and to engage politically, which is different than having a particular view. I don't know, Ms. Pinkwater.
Yeah, and I think, we talk about it early on in the class is this idea of your ideology is developed in your home, right? Mm-hmm. You are sort of told, whatever news is being listened to in your house, whatever news sources are being delivered to your front door, whatever's being listened to on the radio, that's all swirling in your head since you were a young child. And it also is connected with your religion, it's connected with your community outside of school. So I think what's nice is having you, in the 12th grade in the classroom is you're able to say, okay, I understand why I have these opinions, but maybe they're not all, maybe my opinions are changing. And I think helping you sort of open your eyes to discovering your own voice in your political ideology is exciting to do as a teacher. Again, it's not shaping your ideology. I mean, that's for you to sort of uncover. And I think a lot of it'll happen when you're in college and after college, and once you start getting a paycheck, things start changing drastically for how you think politically. So I think it's a nice way for you to sort of have a better exposure into thinking on your own.
Yeah, I remember in the last election, rather than holding a mock election for each of the candidates, we asked students to take a stand on each of the issues, which I thought was really enlightening.
Yeah.
Because when I was in, I think it was 3rd grade, George McGovern was running against Richard Nixon, and my mother was campaigning for McGovern and sent me to school with the McGovern button on, and like those were the days where they had all of the students in an elementary school would vote. They'd go into a voting booth, and that's like one of the ways of simulating civic engagement. But on the other hand, it was really hostile on the playground because like no one in my class, their parents were all supporting Richard Nixon. So it was like kind of brutal, but then I felt vindicated when he was impeached. Wow, Mom, you had a lot of courage. But I'm proud of Archer because just by making that statement that we want you to pay close attention to the issues and not simply vote for a candidate. It was less polarizing, it was just very thoughtful, and it asked you to really engage with the issues in the platform.
And what's so interesting is that the number one issue of students at Archer was gay marriage. And we had, I think, over half of the student body said if they were to use their voice in an election, they would vote to make gay marriage a constitutional right. So to see that, that how democracy actually works and how government works and the Supreme Court works, that's a great lesson for all the students who were here in 2012. See that?
So along those same lines, we were just talking in our class about how voter turnout is extremely low, especially for young people and young adults. So do you believe that it is Archer's responsibility to encourage young adults to vote? And if so, how would Archer go about doing so?
Absolutely. I mean, it's like what I was talking about with local politics. People aren't paying attention, and yet it has a huge impact on, at least has a huge impact on Archer and your education. So we just can't say it enough. And it is not a right everywhere in the world to be able to vote. And my mom used to take me into the voting booth with her as a little girl. I don't know if they still allow that, but that was empowering. And she would take me with her to phone bank for the candidate that she was, behind. And now I do that myself. And it's so empowering to know that you have a voice and that you can use it. It's not surprising that people are disengaging, and I think it is a direct result of the discourse. Again, it's very off-putting, and it's depressing, really, actually, how degraded it's become. And I'm not speaking about the candidates necessarily. I'm talking about the way all of the pundits and the talking heads are talking to each other. It's very discouraging. And what's discouraging about it to me is when I walk into a classroom like the elections classroom and I see how thoughtful and how respectful and how dignified the conversations are. I'm like, this is the future, and we need you. We need you in front of those cameras, showing people what it means to be a true citizen. We have a responsibility to be dignified in our discourse. Democracy depends on an educated populace. And right now, what's troubling is I feel like we're watching adults behave as though they have no education. And democracy won't work unless we are educated and unless there's a plurality of views, there is freedom of speech, but above all, there is reasonable deliberation.
So picking up on your cultivating freedom of speech at Archer point, how does Archer cultivate inclusive conversations about the current political climate without condoning racism and other such prejudices?
That is a brilliant question, and one that I think the faculty and administration are really grappling with right now. We have an anti-bias curriculum at Archer. We part of what we're trying to teach you is to be aware of your own biases. We all have them, and as Ms. Pinkwater was saying, anything that you pick up to read, it's got a bias in it, it's got a slant. We all have values, and that's okay, and that's good, but being aware of our values and our biases is a really important thing when you go out into the world and you're dealing with people who are different from you. I feel very strongly that if public figures are racist or misogynistic, and we see that before us, we have a responsibility to call that out. That's our responsibility as educators. And as a community that values inclusivity and diversity, that exists to fight misogyny, we have to confront it. That's why I say we have to pay close attention to what the platforms say. We have to pay close attention to what the candidates are actually saying. And I think, I think our students, without our getting too much involved, are capable of having those conversations in a respectful way. I don't know what you would say about that, but that's been my observation.
I think so, and usually it's from a unified perspective. When a candidate or a public figure is saying something that is usually agreed upon as racist or homophobic or sexist, we usually are able to look at that from what some could call a one-sided perspective, and saying that that's wrong and that shouldn't be said, and whether or not that's a bad thing. I think it's fine if we're all in agreement that that is not okay and that you shouldn't be able to say that, but I think, as a faculty, you can speak to that too. I could see why, in trying to keep an unbiased classroom and without trying to look at only one side of the issue, you still would have to you don't want to play devil's advocate, but you might have to.
You sort of do have to sometimes. And I think you also have to remove the politics from the rhetoric sometimes and say, we can look at Archer's mission statement, and a lot of those things are not supported in things that are being said that are negative. And so as an institution, we don't support, misogyny or racism. And I think, again, politics aside, we have to call that out in the classroom. But I also think it's a great learning opportunity to say, well, then who are the people supporting that? And who are the people who are backing misogyny and racism and bigotry? And there's a lot of them out there, and why?
Why is the really interesting question.
Yeah.
I don't see the challenge in this election as a liberal versus conservative.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about racism, and we're talking about hate speech, really,
right.
And so that's in its own category, right? And that's why I say we have to pay close attention to what is actually being said. So, well, thank you all for your time.
Thank
you.